Section 316 of the Criminal Procedure Code states that the death penalty in Singapore is to be conducted by hanging. In 2012, Singapore amended its laws to exempt some offences from the mandatory death sentence. In a 2005 survey by the Straits Times, 95% of Singaporeans were of the view that their country should retain the death penalty. The support steadily fell throughout the years due to the increasing liberal opinions of society. Despite the decline, a large majority of the public remain supportive of the use of the death penalty, with more than 80% of Singaporeans believing that their country should retain the death penalty in 2021. Capital punishment in Singapore is a legal penalty. Executions in Singapore are carried out by long drop hanging, and usually take place at dawn. 33 offences including murder, drug trafficking, terrorism, use of firearms and kidnapping warrant the death penalty under Singaporean law. In July 2012, the government made a review of the mandatory death penalty applied to certain drug trafficking or murder offences. In the midst of this review, a moratorium was imposed on all the 35 pending executions in Singapore at that time, 7 for murder and 28 for drug trafficking. During that period of the review of the mandatory death penalty, on the Friday morning of the 30th of August 1996, 29-year-old Zainal Abidin Abdul Malik was hanged at HANGED prison. Zainal Abidin Abdul Malik, born in 1967, Zainal Abidin's father died when he was merely 5, and he was sent to an orphanage. Zainal Abidin often misbehaved even during his childhood, having run away from home several times before he started primary school, and he dropped out of secondary school at age 14, and also left the orphanage to fend for himself, and he first found work as a cleaner at Lucky Plaza. Zainal Abidin first ran afoul of the law by stealing a bicycle when he was 14. He was thus convicted and placed under probation for a year and assigned a job as a delivery assistant. However, Zainal Abidin reoffended during his probation period by mixing with ex-convicts and broke into houses with them, resulting in him receiving probation for 4 years. Zainal Abidin committed another housebreaking offense in 1983, resulting in him being sentenced to 3 years of reformative training before he was released and given an additional 1-year probation. In 1987, Zainal Abidin, who was just released from his probation, committed armed robbery, and he was thus arrested. A year later, he was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment and 12 strokes of the cane, and subsequently served his sentence at HANGED prison. During his term of incarceration, Zainal Abidin resumed his studies and received a certificate for passing his GCE levels in 1989. On the early morning of the 30th of November 1994, both Buu and his partner, Corporal Mu'min bin Mawzi, were at Newton Road carrying out their usual patrol duty when they noticed a man behaving suspiciously near Goldhill Plaza. The officers approached the man, who was carrying a black bag, and they inquired about his identity and asked for his ID card as part of the routine check which police should perform while on patrol. However, the 27-year-old ex-convict Zainal Abidin Abdul Malik retrieved an axe from his black bag and used it to strike Buu on the head, which killed the 47-year-old policeman instantly. Zainal Abidin was subsequently arrested and charged with murder. Buu was posthumously promoted as station inspector after his death, as a recognition of his contributions to the police force from 1973 to 1992, and from 1993 and 1994. When he ended his retirement and rejoined the force. Zainal Abidin Abdul Malik took out an axe and violently swung it at Buu's head, and as he collapsed on the ground, 47-year-old Buu Chiang Hua died instantly on the spot, due to the fatal head injury. Corporal Mu'min quickly gave chase after the suspect, before he returned again to the scene to tend to his fallen partner. The ambulance arrived soon after and paramedics pronounced Buu dead at the scene. Meanwhile, the 27-year-old suspect, identified as Zainal Abidin Abdul Malik, a Malay Singaporean who was previously imprisoned for armed robbery and housebreaking, was charged with murder on the 1st of December 1994. Under Section 302 of the Penal Code, a conviction for murder by the courts would result in the mandatory imposition of the death penalty in Singapore. 2 weeks later, Zainal Abidin was also additionally charged in court with vandalism and attempting to escape the prison cell where he was held in remand. The maximum penalty would be 2 years jail and a fine for attempted escape from police custody, while one who was found guilty of vandalism would potentially receive the maximum sentence of 3 years imprisonment, a fine of Singapore $2,000 and 8 strokes of the cane. On the 7th of July 1995, 28-year-old Zainal Abidin Abdul Malik stood trial at the High Court for the murder of 47-year-old Buu Tiang Huat. In his defense, Zainal Abidin stated that he did not mean to use the axe to assault or kill Buu. He stated that on that day itself, he wanted to go to a hotel at Newton Road to commit armed robbery, and therefore he packed up his black bag, which contained his axe, 2 knives, a hammer, torque light, and a pair of gloves. However, at the last minute, he chickened out and aborted the plan and wanted to return home to Topeo. At the time he was trying to leave, he happened to be stopped by both Buu Tiang Huat and Corporal Ma'amin bin Mauzi. Zainal Abidin recounted that at that time, he was afraid of being caught for possessing a dangerous weapon and thought of randomly grabbing anything inside his bag as a weapon to distract the police before running away. When Zainal Abidin grabbed something with his right hand and swung it at Buu, he realized it was the axe he just grabbed. He insisted it was unintentional and it was an accident. As such, 28-year-old Zainal Abidin Abdul Malik was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. When the death sentence was passed, Zainal Abidin was reportedly emotionless while hearing the verdict, and the families of both the defendant and murder victim were present to hear the judgment. Afterwards, Zainal Abidin's appeal against his sentence was dismissed by the Court of Appeal on the 8th of January 1996. On the Friday morning of the 30th of August 1996, 29-year-old Zainal Abidin Abdul Malik was hanged at Changi Prison. Judicial hangings always take place shortly before dawn on a Friday and are conducted by the long drop method. The Singapore government has affirmed its choice of execution by hanging in favor of other methods. It is a normal practice for everyone present in the courtroom to stand and remain silent before the death sentence is passed. The judge will then proceed to announce the death sentence on the accused, who has been found guilty and convicted of the capital offense. The condemned will be given notice at least 4 days before execution. In the case of foreigners sentenced to death, their families and diplomatic missions or embassies will be given 1 to 2 weeks' notice. Thank you for watching Death Row.